So it is the 2-year anniversary of Vladimir Putin's decision to invade Ukraine. It was 24 February 2022. It's now 24 February 2024. The Russians have lost, according to the Ukrainians, 409,000. And it's not, what's important here is not the exact number, but the ballpark, right? And a military jet. Yesterday they lost another A-50, which is a huge $300 million loss. But it's not this figure so much as the enormity of what has taken place in the last 2 years. This is the British military intelligence update. Russia originally deployed approximately 130 battalion tactical groups for its invasion of Ukraine. Now remember, they thought this was going to be a brief 3-day incursion to, seize something, and then maybe 3 weeks to mop up, and we're 2 years later. It's not over, not anywhere near over. This likely included approximately 1,300 tanks, over 5,000 infantry fighting vehicles and armored personnel carriers, and at least 100,000 personnel. I've seen estimates of 130,000 or more. In 2 years of conflict, Russian losses match and in many cases surpass those that comprised its original force. Confirmed Russian losses include over 2,700 tanks, 5,000 infantry fighting vehicles and APCs. Russia's killed and wounded are likely approximately 350,000 personnel. So it's not 400,000 personnel, but still, the ballpark, that's what we're looking at. Mobilization and recruitment, production and refurbishment of existing stockpiles means that losses have been replaced. Russian forces in Ukraine are now larger in number than at the start of the war. It is now able to maintain attacks along the front line and pursue a strategy of attrition against Ukrainian forces. So Ukrainians can't fight that particular fight. They have to fight differently. But that they've survived even at all is remarkable. Remember the first few days of the war when the United States assumed that Ukraine was going to fall and offered Zelensky a ride? And he quite famously now said, "I need ammunition, not a ride." Do you remember that? And now, what were the consequences for the world? I remember where I was when I found out that Putin had invaded Ukraine. And I remember thinking, oh man, this is going to be terrible. And I remember thinking, yeah, if Putin can get away with this, it's only a matter of time before President Xi feels like he's going to invade Taiwan. Or if Putin winning in Ukraine would cause President Xi to be more apt to invade Taiwan. And they should be worried about that. In the early days, a lot of my friends said, well, I don't want a nuclear war with Russia. Me neither. And that's precisely why he needs to be defeated on the battlefield in Ukraine, so he doesn't spread his poison anywhere else. But what's interesting is that it didn't work out for Putin. I mean, places that you thought were safe for Putin turned out not to be, like Kazakhstan. On the eve of the war, Kazakhstan defied expectations by firmly ruling out the prospect of recognizing Russia's backed separatist entities in eastern Ukraine. Many commentators had seen Tokayev as indebted to Putin for his intervention, and Kazakhstan's neutral stance incurred the collective wrath of Russian lawmakers and Kremlin propagandists. Some of those commentators made unsubtle references to the 7,600-kilometer border the two countries share, the longest continuous land border in the world, and the large ethnic Russian population in Kazakhstan's northern provinces. So how has Kazakhstan managed to sit on two stools, as Kazakh political commentators put it? Backing from China has helped. Now that's fascinating because we thought that Russia was doing this and China was in their corner. But China's been extraordinarily careful not to be seen as backing Russia too much. They didn't want to cut off all their trade with the broader West. Backing from China has helped. In September 2022, Chinese leader Xi made Kazakhstan his first foreign visit since the onset of the coronavirus. While there, he issued a noteworthy pledge that Beijing would, quote, categorically oppose the interference of any forces in the internal affairs of your country, unquote, a message perhaps to Moscow as much as to the West. After that, the hyper-aggressive taunting from the north somewhat died down. They got the message. So it's interesting how geopolitics played out, but not just in Taiwan and not just in Kazakhstan, but around the world. As America pulled back, European nations have really stepped up. The Europeans are stepping up to provide shells, and the UK is doing the same now. UK to help replenish Ukraine's artillery. Britain will spend 245 million pounds or 300 million US dollars over the next year to boost Ukraine's artillery ammunition reserves, the thing it needs the most. It'd be better if they had it right now, but they have to produce it, and that's going to take some time. But they're stepping up. I saw this on PBS NewsHour, Brooks and Capehart on U.S. aid for Ukraine wavering, and they said this. David Brooks said, "If you told me 2 years ago that Europe would be united and strong and in support, even though they were so dependent on Russian energy, and that we'd be the faltering ones, and the faltering ones within our own country were Republicans, I wouldn't have believed you." It's really bizarre what's happened in just 2 years. Nevertheless, Senator Schumer was there visiting Zelensky just yesterday, and European leaders in Kyiv are pledging to back Ukraine on the war anniversary. I want you to see this little video. I'm going to read what Zelensky had to say, and I'll leave you with this little video. "Dear great people of a great country, I'm immensely proud of each of you. I admire each one of you. I believe in each one of you. Any normal person wants the war to end. But none of us will allow Ukraine to end. That's why when it comes to ending the war, we always add on our terms. That's why along with the word peace, there's always another word, just. That's why in the future, the word independent will always appear alongside the word Ukraine. This is what we fight for, and we will prevail on the greatest day of our lives." Okay, so listen. You have to have those qualifiers. If you just have peace, but the Russians get to make the terms of peace and gobble up Ukrainian territory and come back later on, that's not peace. That's just a pause. That's why you need to have just, and that's why you need to have independent as part of the equation. And without that, you're lost. I thank all our soldiers, our people, and everyone around the world who stands with us and the truth. Glory to Ukraine. And he showed in this video a lot of some of the wreckage of what's happened. And then you see this, and I'm just going to show you briefly. 2 years later, we welcome our friends and partners here. Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, Chair of the G7 presidency. Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, currently holding the presidency over the Council of the EU. This is symbolic, and it eloquently describes the path we have traveled over these 2 years and the difference between February 24th then and now. And I thought that was a great way of showing the unity that has really grown, particularly in recent months. Okay, that's all that I have today. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.